Marketer of the Day, episode 693. Get paid to build your skills and increase your hourly rates. Master the freelancer and career game with Nissar Ahamed. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Nissar Ahamed, and Nissar is the founder and CEO of CareerMetis.com. He's also the host of the Career Insider podcast, and he's the co-host of the C.A.R.E. podcast. So Nissar, glad to be talking to you.
Thanks, Robert. I'm happy to be here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, the pleasure is mutual. So if people are listening and they say, what is Career Metis and what are we talking about today? What's your focus and how can we help some people?
Sure. So Career Metis, I look at it as a one-stop destination for job seekers and freelancers when it comes to helpful, actionable insights and content that they can learn. So for example, if someone is looking for a new job, we have information on how to create a resume, how to find a job, how to ace your interview, how to ask for a promotion once you get a job. And let's say you're the type of person who doesn't want a job, you like some freedom and you want to enter the freelance economy, we have some similar content on that as well. So if I can summarize in like one sentence, it is an online publication dedicated to job seekers and freelancers. So it's a destination that we want it to be where anyone has any questions about their career and how to prosper in their careers, they can come and read and listen to the type of content we have.
Super cool. So, and I like how you say you'll help people with their careers as far as the resume and the interview if they want to do things the traditional tried and true way, but if their personality does not fit, and these days with millennials and Generation Z, some people that want to travel the world and set their own hours and work from anywhere, and they want to do this freelancing thing because like some people just want to have a little bit of freedom, but also have some extra above average responsibility, and they know that they can do things a little bit riskier but also have more rewards and go out there and find the jobs they want. So that's great that you cater to both sides of things, right? If someone wants the job or the freelance kind of economy gig lifestyle. And so what are the new things that people need to know about? Because I mean, as you know, even 5-10 years ago, if someone said that they were making their income from Fiverr or Upwork or one of these other marketplaces, it was almost a joke, right? It was like, oh, you're just working for like your side hustle or beer money. But some people have turned this into just their livelihood. So I mean, as the guy in the eye of the hurricane and the thick of it, what have you been seeing the last few years?
That's amazing. And I want to say I'm always reading and publishing content on this. It's not just me. So far, we have had over 1,200 unique contributors contribute their own voice on all the subjects I spoke about. So I get the pleasure of reading their content, editing it, and putting it out there. And things have recently shifted, especially when it comes to freelancing, which is very encouraging because, hey, listen, man, I drink my own Kool-Aid. I actually used the content on my own site to launch my freelancing career, which I launched 3 months ago. And right now, 80% of my income comes from freelance writing. If you go 5-10 years ago, freelancing was something that people did when they retired, right? I've bumped into people at events. They have been a chief marketing officer or a journalist from all their years. And now after retirement, they want to do something. So they take up some freelance gigs, or people do freelancing in the middle of finding a full-time job. But now you hit the nail on the head. Now people are actually being very proactive, where they are saying, wait a minute, I don't want to live in my city. I want to travel, and I don't want to work for one client, which is my boss, my employer. I want to work for multiple clients. And thanks to so many different resources right now and technology, the internet, many people can make that happen. So I want to highlight that's been a biggest shift. People respect themselves as freelancers now. They're more confident to say I'm a freelancer because it's become more mainstream right now. The gig economy is not just, it's just not a small subject. I think Upwork released Upwork, which is like the 800-pound gorilla in the freelancing space, released some statistics. I think 30 million Americans or 50 million Americans, like 30 to 50 million Americans are doing some type of freelance work. That's a huge number, right?
Yeah.
That's actually, I'm from Canada, that's like the entire population of Canada as freelancers, just to put things into perspective. And that number will only grow because of technology, because of uh, uh, disruption and so many new ways. And also, um, one other thing I want to point out is people are also using freelancing to gain the skill set that they can use to go back and get a full-time job. So let's say I'll give you my own example. I used to work in sales for 9 years, and I saw what is happening online. Some of my friends were getting into online marketing. I want to get into online marketing, so I started blogging. Then after I started blogging, I started making some money on blogging, started getting paid for content. Using that skill set, I was going able to go to my past employer and say, listen, I don't want to be in sales. I think I can do a better job in marketing, content marketing, growth marketing. And I got that job. So thanks to blogging and freelancing and content, I was able to create a career for myself. I'm not the only one. A lot of people are doing that right now. So it's a great time. There's no shortage of opportunities, and I consider myself an eternal optimist. If you're not making money in the long term, you have all the resources. It's on you. There's no excuses. Others have done it. You can do it as well.
That's amazing. And what I'm getting from your answers here is that freelancing gives us more opportunities, because one thing that I thought was really important there that we blew by is that if you're between jobs, I mean, it's always been a way to keep the bills paid, keep things afloat. And that's really cool, because there are so many people out there who are afraid of making the leap either to a new job or making a full-time, their self-employed business work or something. And that's a really interesting concept there that, some people are just stuck in a job they've hated for years because they're afraid of that gap period between when the job ends or when they get laid off and trying to find a new job. So that's interesting. But I also love that story there, how you used freelancing to build up a skill set, to build up a portfolio, to prove that you can do something and you're good at it and you made money from it, and then say, hey, I've been doing this myself. How about a job? So that way you can have that steady employment. You can play in a bigger playground, right? Because sometimes you blog by yourself and you only get a little bit of traffic, but if you blog for a huge company, I mean, they have all kinds of resources, extra employees at their disposal. And I mean, and this is even like, how I got started. Like I'm a computer programmer and I had ideas for, plugins and software. But then, as you know, building a business sometimes requires time. Sometimes you have to go through a lot of different ideas that fail, or, build up your list, get your customers, get your traffic, all that fun stuff. And so freelancing, we can get the bills paid now. And we even talked before we began recording that, I've had people on who, make money with their voice and things like that. And you make money from your writing. So when you deal with people that you've helped with your blogging, or like you have your podcast, things like that, what's the starting point? Like, do people say, I want freelancing, but I'm not sure in what area? Or do they already have a skill like voiceover or blogging? Like, where's the starting point usually?
That's a good point. And I wanted to, you brought something, right? Like you brought up something which is really important. So I have a second podcast with a co-host. It's called the C.A.R.E show, C.A.R.E show, and where the entire theme of the podcast is career stagnation, meaning people are stuck. I think there was a study done by Gallup a few years ago. 70% of people working in a company are disengaged. That means they would rather do something else. 70%, that's huge. That's a big number, man. Like if there are 10 people in a room, 7 people would rather do something else, right? And for them, I would say, listen, you don't need to necessarily jump and quit and try to figure things out. Let's say you have that job, you're not fulfilled, and you see that. Let me give you an example. Maybe you are an accountant, right? And you work the job. You realize you made a mistake. You're there. And you have this passion for voice. I'll use your example. You have your passion for voice. You think you can do some voiceover work. What I would recommend to them is, hey, keep the job, right? It's paying the bills. Start a side hustle. Go do some free work on Fiverr or Upwork or Voices.com. Build your portfolio. Build some very quickly, and I'm not talking about months, in a couple of weeks, you can build a portfolio, then start applying for jobs on Upwork, voices.com. I would say these are the two best ones for, like, I like Upwork because it is more reliable and it's huge as a volume. Most of my income comes from Upwork. Not a plug. I don't work for them. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of other platforms. Go join specific Facebook groups. Voices.com is a good example. I think you had their CEO a few episodes back. And then you start applying, and eventually someone will give you a shot, right? Of course, when you have no experience, you will have to apply more than anybody else, and you will start getting some gigs. Then you'll start building that portfolio. You will reach a point where you will notice that the side hustle is you're spending a lot more time, and is starting to make a little bit more money. Then you can confidently switch over and make that a full-time job. So, and this could take 2 years, 3 years, doesn't matter. But at least you're not going home on and stressing about how much you don't enjoy. At least you're doing something productive. That's one thing I would recommend to people, meaning you're doing it in a stress-free way, but you're also building a strong footing. I think you hit the nail on the head, Robert. You said when you start your business, everything takes time. There's a lot of things to learn. So I always encourage people to do the safe route. And, my goal is to help people increases the chance of success and mitigate and reduce the risk of failure. So that's one thing I would recommend. That's a good example I can give. So you can do that.
And I am exactly with you on that philosophy. I definitely believe in doing both until one picks up or the other. That way you reduce risk. I mean, between the age of 22 to 25, I had my one and only full-time job, and a couple of my entrepreneurial peers made fun of me for that. They said, well, why did you take that job? Why don't you quit that job and go all in on the other thing? And I said, well, because I want to reduce the risk. I want to make both things work. It doesn't mean that I'm going to have one foot in and one foot in the other. I have a plan, but I'm being more smart about it and not letting the emotions take over. And I like the way that you described it there of you saying that, well, there's kind of like the ratio, right? There's like at first this kind of side hustle freelancing thing. It's a little bit of time and no money, or a little bit of money, and then you gradually kind of increase the time and then increase the money, and then kind of reassess and figure out, well, how much has that grown, and how does that counterbalance the other income, so that way we're making progress, right? That way we're not just staying in that same old boring accounting job that we weren't even sure why we got into it, and then we kind of hate it, but don't hate it enough to quit, but also don't like it enough to feel fulfilled. I mean, why keep putting yourself through that misery every day? And you mentioned a couple of things that I think were really important there. And one is you mentioned really quickly to join Facebook groups. And I think that in this day and age, no matter what we're doing, that's a really good idea, whether we're, like parenting or dieting or getting into freelancing, whatever it is. I mean, there are some of these groups out there, if people don't know, that are huge, that have tens of thousands of people, and you can just join these things and at first be a lurker and just get immersed in things and see what questions come up, and kind of look at the comments and see what are the kind of the repeat advice, and see who are the people that know the most, and then eventually maybe post your own questions to get that help, so that way you don't go it alone. And then something else that you mentioned that I think was really important is that you said to make this freelancing thing work. You go on a site, like you said, your favorite is Upwork, which, I mean, like you said, they're huge. They're like a publicly traded company now. I think even Fiverr is trying to go public too. But you go and you bid on these jobs, and you're saying that this isn't just a little dabbling, slow thing. You're saying get your first jobs in weeks, not months. That way you don't get distracted, right? And that way you can see some results, you can get some traction, and that kind of mindset, like I've seen that a lot with the career interview, job hunting kind of stuff. I mean, I'm sure you know about all this. Like, you apply for a job, 300 other people applied for it. And that's just how it is these days, right? It's not like you can just say, well, let me pick and choose. It's like, no, you have to put in the work and you have to really blast things, and you have to know that in order to get this result, I'm going to have to put in this amount of work, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. But if we know that that's the game we're playing, and we know that maybe we have to hustle a little bit, to use that overused term, and put a lot of time in, or put a lot of work in a short amount of time, like kind of burst it, then I mean, I think that's good to know going in, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you talked about which I want to touch on. I'll touch on the last thing you said is initially you have to hustle, right? And you got to think about yourself, right? Look at like people are people celebrate when they hear like an athlete or an actor go through struggles. Like every actor in Hollywood, waited at tables, then they became a big star. So the people rationally know that's the case. Like they look at someone like Conor McGregor, the guy fought for many years before he jumped at the $100 million fight. He spent 10 years and everybody knows the story. But when it comes to things like freelancing or jobs, people don't want to do that. The people we admire and idolize, we know they went through the struggle and the hustle. But when it comes to ourselves, we think it is too much and we give up so quickly. So I just want to say that everything is the same. Like your career is the same. So when you start out, no matter whatever it is, it's a podcasting, my blog I started, my freelancing. Initially, I had to do a lot of work and nobody paid attention. Then it gets to a point where you over time, as you work on that skill set, you get better. People are coming to you, right? So with freelancing, I'll give you an example. When I started on Upwork. I did my research. I looked at all of the websites and I went hard. And my response ratio was like 5%. I would like 20 application, 1 in 20 would respond. And of that, I would rarely get one. Then I got one. I did a good job for them. They started giving me good 5-star rating. I made some money, social proof. Eventually, I got better at applying to the jobs. The last time I applied, my ratio became 33%. 1 in 3 people responded to me, and 1 in 3 of those people who responded hired me because they saw that I have experience and proof. I'm not talking about 3 years. I'm talking only 3 months. Now, similar to a Facebook group, I belong to a Slack group. Someone reached out to me saying, I think you would be a good fit. Can you send me some information? They know nothing about me. I just told this is what I do, right? So now finding clients has become easier. And because I initially accepted that it's going to be hard, and this is the process. Everybody goes through this. This is the truth. Let's do it. And now things have got easier, right? So that's one thing I want to, I really love what you said, the hustle. Initially, you got to grind. Maybe it is 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months. Who cares? As long as you're successful in the end, who cares how long it takes, right? So that's one thing I want to say. I also want to go back to something that you said your friends made fun of you because you had this job. They were all entrepreneurs. I want to be very vocal about this. There's nothing wrong with having a job, right? You don't have to be. Not everybody. One of the things that really bothers me online is everybody thinks that you got to be an entrepreneur, and having a job is like this menial, bottom of the funnel stuff. I disagree with that. Think about this. Your podcast right now, you're going to publish on a WordPress site and it's hosted somewhere else. There are hundreds of people working at these companies to make your podcast happen. So you can't just go out and diss people for having a job. There are a lot of people who are very happy having a job. There's nothing wrong with that. And some people decide that maybe one employer is not right. They want to start their own company. But I would just want to, it's a pet peeve of mine where people start dissing other people for having a job. I just want to mention, no matter what you do, whether you want to be an employee, an owner of a business, or a freelancer, you follow your own path. And we are all fortunate to live in a time when any of this is totally possible. It's so easy. I shouldn't say easy. It's simpler and relatively easier than ever before. Sorry
That's
about
great.
my rant over there. I just wanted to, address that very quickly.
But I mean, and also kind of to add to that, I mean, I've been full time 10 years now, and I found out years later that a lot of those people that were kind of making fun of that, they were making less money than even the job paid, and there's a lot of, I don't know, like psychology in that about like staying in your lane, and that sometimes the people that are most vocal or that are the pushiest towards you are the most fearful, and many times they're kind of expressing their own fear onto you without them even realizing it. But yeah, so, and it's like, and like, there's so many times when I've had like a student or a friend who said, I've made $500 on this, and they'd feel kind of down, like, oh, only a little bit of money. And I'm like, that's great. Like, you generated that out of thin air. You found a path that worked. You found something that can grow. So, I mean, yeah, I'm right there with you in that it's easy to fall into the negativity and poo on someone and or say, oh, you only made a little bit of money. But I mean, like you said, we're living in the most amazing time. I mean, you can install an app and become an Uber driver these days and make money doing kind of anything that you want. So there's a lot of fun stuff for people to pursue and to do here. And what I like about what we've been saying in our conversation here is that you mentioned Upwork. So that way we're not just leaving people hanging. We're not just like being vague here. Like, we're saying Upwork is a good starting point. But something that I've noticed with a lot of these freelancers who really made it work is they're not married to just one platform, right? It's not like they're spread too thin, but maybe they're on a handful of platforms. If they're a voiceover artist, they're on a couple of different voiceover communities, like, Audible and things like that. If they're writers, they kind of do what you're alluding to, where they're in Slack groups, they're looking to get clients, so they're not just sticking to just that one platform. And I've noticed that the freelancers that are really standing out are the ones that market themselves, and they hop on podcasts like this one. They have YouTube channels, they have websites, they're building a list, they have a Facebook presence. And so, have you seen similar things like that? Like the freelancers that are really making it work, they're treating it as their own single employee business, right? They're not just a Upwork worker. They might be on Upwork, but they're on multiple channels.
I love what you said there, right? So I look at any channel as a source of finding clients, right? Like, for example, Upwork is one of the sources where you find clients. Voice, like, there are so many different, I mentioned Facebook groups. I mentioned, like, there are also like masterminds, there are events. There is so many different things you can do to find clients. Initially, I would say choose one, because when you are trying to get your first client, everybody remembers that first client they got, right? When you have a business or a freelancer, focus on that one platform. Then you can start branching out. For example, now I'm on Slack groups, Facebook groups. I'm also trying to do some cold emails. So initially, one thing I would say initially, so when I was starting out a few months ago, I looked at myself and it's like, okay, my business is taking a little bit longer than I expect to monetize. I had quit a high-paying job to focus on it full time, and I realized my runway is not that long, so I needed to come up with a way to make money. So I asked myself, what am I good at? I'm good at writing, so let's become a freelance writer. So I focused on Upwork. When I went to every other website for advice, everyone said, oh, spend some time, create a website, market yourself, all this advice. And immediately, many people like me would be intimidated. I don't even have money and clients. Why should I spend time? I think the best blog post I read was Ramit Sethi's I'll Teach You to Be Rich, where he mentioned, forget everything else, find 3 clients. Forget everything else. Just your singular focus, no matter what type of freelancer you are, writer, graphic designer, voiceover, find 3 clients. And there are 100 different ways to find different clients. Just go. So that's what I did. I just went and found clients. And once that is done, now I'm actually working and building a portfolio website. So that comes back to what you are saying. Initially, you got to find clients. Then you become so successful, they come to you. So you do content marketing, you build a good website, you go on YouTube, you create a podcast. Eventually, people will learn about you. They'll come to you. So now you've flipped the scale where you're not reaching out to them, they're reaching out to you. But I would say, yes, you should do that. The successful freelancers, I think in every niche, I study this, I write about them. They have done a really good job of branding themselves. They don't need to try hard. People look at their content and they said, hey, can you write for me? And they can actually charge more money. But it's a scale. You got to start somewhere. Then you got to go all the way to, the high paying jobs. I always give the example of Jim C.A.R.E. When he started out, he was doing stand-ups at this place called Yak Yaks in Toronto, which was not paying that much. Then Many years later, he made $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. Everybody knows that, but he started somewhere, right? Eventually, people found him. So the same analogy for yourself as well. So yes, you should build a brand, but focus on finding some clients, prove yourself, then go ahead and build that marketing machine like you have done, with the podcast, amazing job, 600 plus interviews. Now people know you. You can do that over time.
And that's a great point that like there are many, it's easy to look at where people are at now and try to replicate that, but it's more important to look at the path they went on and where they started and what they did at first to just pay the bills. Like you said, like Ramit's advice, find 3 clients and then know that those other things are things to do later on and nice to haves. But I mean, it's really tempting to let me figure out my business name. Let me print some business cards, right? Let me spend 2 days adjusting my Twitter background, which might make you feel good, might make you think that you're putting in the time, but it's more important to do those important things first and then do the lesser important things in order to make things sustainable and to evolve into the person that we know we need to be. And then to get to that goal, like you said, where now people are finding you and you can increase your rates and do all those other things, but the right things in the right order. So as we're getting to the final minutes here and we're beginning to wind down, do you think that we missed anything? Is there anything really important with this career, freelancing, job advice scenario that you think that is really important that we fit into our interview today?
Yeah, I probably have touched on this, and I want to couple of things I want to end with. First of all, I said, no matter what you want to do, follow your path. I think you'll get to a point, no matter what age you are, you'll find out your path, and don't do it for someone else or what you see on a website about someone else. No matter what you want to be, whether it's a job, whether you want to be really good at that job, or whether you want to get promoted in the company, where you want to be the CEO of the company or a freelancer, you can do it. And my mission with my website is to empower people so that they can see that. Then they can, once they see that they have the tools, then they can go and get the tools. So no matter whatever your path you can pursue, we live in the best time in human history for that. The second thing I want to see is this is something I truly believe. I live by it, as your work transforms yourself. I think work is one of the most transformative things you can ever find, and people can prove me wrong, meaning you can go to a course, you can read a book, you can listen to 100 podcasts, but unless you work on that thing, that's how you become better, your skill set. So constantly work on your craft, on improving yourself, and the more you do, you become better. Then you get to a point where 6 months later, you're actually a totally different person. Not because of I'm not dissing self-education. I think self-education is really important, but a lot of people ignore the work part. Like when you constantly, like I can guarantee you, Robert, your podcast number 1 and podcast number 600 are totally different. And because you've been doing so many times, you look back and say, holy crap, I've come so far. So take some joy in the work you do. And if you have that mindset, no matter what happens, recession, depression, whatever, you will prevail. And you will find a way to figure it out. So that's my closing thoughts to you and your audience.
I love it. Fantastic way for us to begin to wrap things up here. And I agree completely that book learning is one thing and it's important, but at some point we have to implement that. And there was a guy that I used to buy a lot of these short reports from, where he would attend conferences, he would read books, go through courses, and then deliver like some summarized notes. And then sometimes I would see notes from books I'd read or conferences I'd attended, and I thought, that guy was really focusing on the wrong stuff. And he'd go way into detail about unimportant things and not have enough detail about the important things. And it was because he was just a learner, right? He was just kind of summarizing, and he didn't know where to focus or where to dig deep. And so as you've kind of explained to us in your latest experiments these last few months with the freelancing, it's like sometimes you just have to go out and do things and make those mistakes and evolve, so that way you know what to focus on more of and what things just don't really matter, which you might stress out at first, But then it turns out, like, does it really matter, for example, with podcasting, what kind of exact microphone or what kind of exact camera that you have? I mean, not really. I mean, there are always things that can be done, but a lot of these details that we were so afraid of when we started turns out don't really matter. And then some things that we hadn't even considered, we wouldn't know unless we were just in the trenches in the thick of it. So great stuff today. And if people were really amazed and engaged by the advice you dished out and the conversation we had to do today, what's the next step? Where can and where should people go to keep this party continuing?
Sure. I mean, the two best places are email and LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is my full name, Nissar Ahamed, Nissar. My first name, last name is Ahamed. And my email address is Nissar, my first name at careermetis.com. So I'm responsive. I respond to emails. I respond to LinkedIn. Even if I don't like your message, even if you send me a pitch, we all get that. I'll respond and say, not interested. I believe in responding to people. So those are the best ways to reach me.
That's great. And that's good life advice in general, right? Even if it's a no thank you or not interested, it just takes those few seconds. And that is slightly more than the average person does. And you never know even what that would lead to. And then I know that you have you have two podcasts, right? There's the podcast where you're the host and the co-host. So do you feel like plugging those as well?
Yeah. So thank you. The Career Insider podcast is, one thing I noticed is there's a lot of advice for job search and resume and all that, but a lot of people do not know what the actual job is. Like if someone wants to be I don't know, like a specific type of a nurse, or someone wants to be a voiceover actor, they don't really know what that person does inside and out. So I started the Career Insider podcast, where every episode I interview someone who does a specific job, and I walk through their life story, what they do day in, day out, what they don't like, what they like, and advice for others who want to get in there. So that's something I've been doing it. And recently I'm rebranding. I'm relaunching it the next season in January. Right now I'm doing interviews. The C.A.R.E show, C.A.R.E stands for Career Advancement, Readiness, and Enhancement. We interview, me and my co-host, we have a couple of power sessions. We talk about all about career advice, and we interview career coaches, and they give their advice to the audience. So it's all about how you can get better, how can you get better jobs, how you can apply for a job. So it all serves a different audience and a niche. And I really enjoy podcasting, both as a guest, as a host. It's a fun way to learn.
Yeah, it is. Even, as hosts, we learn things. When you're a guest on a show, you learn things. And then someone even listening learns just from the back and forth randomness of things that sometimes come up that you wouldn't have thought to mention if you were vlogging or blogging and being really careful with your words. Sometimes just the messiness gives us some real fun nuggets of insight. So that is the Career Insider podcast. Search it on iTunes, and then the C.A.R.E podcast. So that way you can get those career finding and career building skills. And then also, I think that's a really interesting concept with the Career Insider podcast, is interviewing people in specific careers and finding out the do's and don'ts and the likes and dislikes and the everyday stuff. I mean, a real fun way to dig deep, because as we said a few times, this is literally the best time to be alive. We have freelancing platforms, we have social media, we have podcasting. So back in the days past, you'd have to go to the library and hope there was one or maybe two books that were published 20 years ago on the subject. Now you can get the most cutting edge things at careermetis.com. That's CAREERMETIS.com. And then to contact Nissar directly, you can email him at nissar@careermetis.com, and then find him on LinkedIn. That is first name Nissar, last name Ahamed. We have to spell things out since we're in podcast land, right? So thanks so much, Nissar, for stopping by and telling us what we need to know about living the life of our dreams and escaping mediocrity and, getting past unhappiness, and knowing that in this modern day and age, there's hope, there's options, there's resources, there's Facebook groups, there's Slack, there's Upwork, there's there's so many things. I mean, we couldn't even list them all, right? There's new things every day, new possibilities for us to get the career we've wanted, or pursue the lifestyle we've wanted, or get these skills and live anywhere. I mean, it's the best thing ever. So thanks for stopping by and taking the time and helping us out here.
Thank you.
Need more guests for your podcast? How about a podcast that's set up in the first place? Schedule a call with us right now by visiting doneforyoupodcasting.com.